Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. All right, over the years I've become more interested in the ideas of gaming literacy and in the ideas of how games teach the player and teach their players how to play the games, whether that's through their rule books or through just the presentation out of the box. The idea of gaming literacy, I think, is something that not enough people think about. We have literacy with reading. It's the idea that, the more we read, the more we get comfortable with reading things, it kind of fuels our desire to read more because we become more comfortable with reading. We learn new words, we learn new sentence structure, we learn new ideas. And so it opens up all of these doors to other opportunities to read. The same goes with games. The more games we play, the more games we kind of innately know because we learn mechanisms. We learn things like action selection or worker placement. We learn about making choices with characters. We learn about how D6s, D4s, D12s, what all of those concepts mean. And each of those concepts that we learn helps in building our gaming literacy. The other side of that equation is how the game itself teaches those concepts. And over the years, I think it's something that I feel that not enough developers think about the idea of an introductory game, of a game that's super basic, of a game that teaches new people, brand new into a hobby, of just what the heck is going on. That's one of the reasons why I really wanted to check out Gloomhaven, Jaws of the Lion, even though I don't like Gloomhaven. I had heard that it does a very good job of onboarding players into a pretty complex game. And I agree with everybody who said it does that. It is one of the best games for that I have seen. It's also the reason why I kind of picked on Aftermath when I reviewed that game, because Aftermath could have been that game. And it should have been that game. But the rule book was pretty bad and it didn't do a good job of teaching people how to play the game. So now we're taking a look at Dungeons and Dragons Adventure Begins. This is a cooperative board game and it says your fun, fast entry into the world of D&D for ages 10 and up. And this is a pretty interesting product and it's from WotC, of course. This is kind of an introduction to cooperative board games, but more so I think it is an introduction to some of the ideas of Dungeons and Dragons. However, I think it might be a little too basic. It says it's for 10-year-olds or for 10 and up, and I would say that primarily this game is for children. And I think it is a good game for very young kids to play with their parents. However, kids these days, actually kids throughout all of time, but are super smart and super savvy with gaming. You have 7-year-olds playing games like Minecraft and Mario Maker, building levels, playing through levels. You have 10-year-olds building incredible things in Minecraft and dominating the battlefields in things like Fortnite. Video games are super complex these days and young kids are picking them up like it's just second nature. So the Adventure Begins cooperative board game introduction might even be a little bit too basic for young kids. I'm not sure. I did play this the other night. I played it with my wife and her friend. So my wife is not super into games. She has played Dungeons and Dragons before and she has enjoyed it. And we have been playing with her friend and her friend's husband, we have been playing some adventure games over the last year or so, and they've been having a good time. We've played things like Mansions of Madness, which my friend loves. We've played things like Escape the Curse of the Temple. So we've played some pretty good adventure games, and we've been having a lot of fun, and they've been having fun learning about all of these new kinds of games. So my wife and her friend, we played this, and while we had a good time, I would be lying if I didn't say I was a little bored by the end of the game. But I can see this game working for kids, especially if you are a parent who wants to introduce their kids to the world of Dungeons and Dragons and role playing. So there are a couple of neat things about this game, though, a couple things that I really like, and these are the things that made me want to play the game or get the game. The first thing is character creation. So with character creation, each player is going to take one of these trays here, and there are 4 different characters to pick from. You have Kaya Estorio. She is, or he or she, male and female pictures there, is a human sorcerer. And then you have Korn Nemanis, who is a dragonborn rogue. Then you have here Tak Strongheart, which is a dwarf fighter. And then finally we have here, oops, green guy, there we go, is Lucan Silverfrond, a elf bard. So the first thing you're going to do is when you pick a character is you're going to pick the kind of character you want to play, and you're going to choose male or female. And then you're going to take your tray here, your character tray, and you're going to slot that character in. So that is your character. Then the next thing you have is kind of like your personality. This is going to give you a little bit an idea of the kind of character that you want to be. And what this is doing is, really this is encouraging young players to start thinking about character traits and how they want to portray their character. So you can be the fixer or the gambler. The fixer is resourceful, blunt, and focused. The gambler is daring, arrogant, or funny. And then each of those has a little special power that they can use. And you also have the enforcer or the genius. And these have a different power that they can use, a few different keywords. Now these keywords never really appear in the game. I was kind of hoping they would, but they're just kind of like seeds that you can plant in the minds of young players or new players to think about how they want to portray their character. And then each one of these has a simple power that they can use. So you're going to pick one of these, and then you're going to slot that in next to your character card. And then finally, you're going to take, you have a level 2, level 1 combat cards, and those can both be upgraded or leveled up to level 2. And you're going to pick one of those to use. And so this is going to be your character. So you've created your character, you've made a couple choices, you have some ideas about the kind of personality your character is going to have. And then finally, for your character creation, each player is going to be able to choose a backpack. So this is a pretty interesting idea. This backpack comes with a number of items. And really what these are story items for story prompts, basically. Throughout the game, you're going to see maybe this little backpack icon. And it's going to encourage the player to look at their backpack and come up with an idea, and then based on some of the stuff that they have in their backpack. None of these have any, at least as far as I can tell, none of them have any gameplay mechanisms at all. These are purely seed words to get people to start thinking about how they would use the things that their character has in a role-playing game to come up with fun and unique things to do while you are on an adventure. And so once everybody has picked their character, the next thing you're going to do is you are going to pick a boss to play against. And in the game, there are 4 different bosses. There is a Kraken, there is a Death Sleep, the Green Dragon, there is Filbrus, the Beholder, and there is Orn, the Fire Giant. Now, I really like the art in this game. I like this cartoony D&D style, and it is in stark contrast to the D&D Adventure board game systems, which have almost no art. I mean, this game right here shows that WotC can make a colorful game with great art. I mean, just look at the dungeon tiles. If they need to start making their D&D Adventure board game system look like this with good colors and good art. It's really frustrating that those games are so dull looking. But so you're going to pick a character, you're going to pick a boss to fight, and each one of these bosses is represented by a certain tile. And so you're going to take that tile, and I believe this boss here is associated with Neverwinter. Okay, so this is going to be where you're going to fight that boss. And then each of the bosses has a small deck of 3 challenge cards. Okay, so for the rest of the tiles, you are going to just put those in a random order, and you're going to link them together like this to create your board. These are just single-sided, so there are only 4 different boards to play. All right, so you've got your board laid out there. And then I did forget to show you guys, there are miniatures for each of the characters, and pretty nice looking plastic minis. You know, not bad for just a mass market game that you can buy at just about any store. So we were playing as the dwarf there. So let's say we were playing as the dwarf and the sorcerer. You would go ahead and you would put those 2 characters at the starting spot there. And then you would take your 3 boss challenge cards, 1 through 3, and each one you would put at the end of the dungeon in ascending order like that. So you would have 1, 2, 3, and then the final boss here. Now each one of these dungeon boards is represented by a deck of encounter cards. And so what you do is, when you're on the first board, you take the deck of encounter cards for that board. So that would be Neverwinter Wood, and you're going to give those a shuffle. And then you're going to put those in this deck holder here. And then this becomes pretty much the Dungeon Master's tool that they are going to use throughout the game. And each turn, the Dungeon Master deck is going to pass from player to player. And as the players progress from space to space, the Dungeon Master is going to draw a card. And there are 2 different kinds of cards. The blue cards are encounter cards, and the orangish cards are enemy cards. When you move in a straight line, you're going to always have a blue encounter. These side spaces here are for enemy encounters. You don't have to do those. You have to choose if you're going to have an enemy encounter or not. And so right there, that's giving a little bit, it's teaching a little bit about how to make choices. Because if you want to gain items and gold, you are better off going to one of these spots to fight an enemy. However, that is also a good way to take damage. One of the only ways to take damage is to fight enemies in this game. And so there is a risk-reward system that is introduced. But if we move here, we would face off against a blue encounter card. And then who's ever playing the GM would read a shrubbery. An awakened shrub slinks into your path. You can't tell how it's talking, but it demands you name it before you can move on. All players, except the DM, must come up with a name that pleases the shrub. The DM chooses the name that the shrub accepts, and the player whose name you chose gets +1 gold. Now, gold can be used for a number of things. 5 pieces of gold you can level up to your level 2 combat tile. You can buy items for 3 gold, and you can also use 5 gold to revive your character if you die. The items in the game you can get from buying them with gold, or there are ways that you can get them through different encounters. And each one has a picture, it has its name, kind of tells you a little bit about it. And a lot of this game has a sense of humor. The axe of the dwarvish lords, it slices, it smashes, it's shiny. The handle's a bit short though. And then it's going to tell you what it's going to do. This is going to add 2 damage to an attack. And most of these you can only use once per board. And then you're going to flip it over, and then on the next board you can unexhaust it to use it again. So again, this is teaching you a little choice, when to use your gear, when to use your items, when it is more effective. If you were to go off onto one of the side paths, some characters can keep going. Some characters can go off to the side paths to fight monsters, or you can also do it together. And so it kind of teaches you about splitting the party or not. And then if you were to fight an enemy, you would, well, actually you can do this as well. The little DM tray has a slot there that you can stand up the card to put it in there, so everybody can see it while you are reading, and they can look at the picture, they can look at the art. And the same goes for the enemies. You can put the enemies there, and then it comes with this little health tracker here that you can slide onto the card, and so you can slide it down to keep track of their hit points. It's going to tell you a little bit about the character, if they have any weaknesses or advantages to anything. And then it's going to tell you what the enemy does on a roll of a D10, if they hit or if they miss. And then it's going to tell you what the characters get for defeating them. And the character combat is pretty simple. They can pick one of 2 basic attacks, or they can do a more powerful attack that has a range of different outcomes. And you're going to be moving from space to space, from board to board. Each time you get to the end, you're going to face off against one of the boss challenge cards, and then eventually you're going to get to the end where you are going to have to fight the boss. So it's a very basic game. A lot of the encounter cards will ask the players to come up with a plan. So this one is Pretty Lights, and that would say, wild fairies rule the forest, and not all of them are friendly. You see a glimmer of light in the trees, and it draws you forward against your will. Each player comes up with a plan to escape the magic's pool. Then all players roll for individual outcomes. So while that's cool, it is teaching new players that role-playing is as much about rolling dice and obeying rules as it is about telling stories. Unfortunately, none of the stories, none of the plans that the players are going to come up with ever really have any bearing on what happens. What happens is always just a roll of a D20. And so in that sense, I think the game kind of misses its mark, because there are no stats, there are no things that you can do to make your plan work better. You can come up with the story, but that's all it's ever going to be, is a story. But each of the boards does have a large deck of encounter cards, and you're not going to see nearly all of them on each game. So there is some replay. But I'm wondering, just because the game is so basic, I'm wondering how often this game would really get played. I think after playing a couple of times, a parent could pretty easily just move on to like the D&D essentials and teach their kid how to play an actual role-playing game. But this does come with a lot of, like I said, a lot of things with unique art. It comes with some very nice D20s, some good minis, lots of cardboard, and it's all pretty good quality. And you can get the whole thing for like, I think it's like $20, $24. The rule book is well written. All of the rules are presented. It tells you how to set up the game, how to take turns. You know, it's all in all, this is a good packaged game that teaches some very basic ideas about playing board games and about playing role-playing games. I just don't know if it goes far enough. I don't know if it really will appeal to young kids today who are already so versed in so many of these concepts. But I can also tell you that 3 40-year-old adults had a pretty good time playing it. My wife enjoyed it. Her friend enjoyed it. I enjoyed it about 3 tiles worth. By the last tile, I was ready to call it a night. You know, I was glad when the game was over. I wanted a little bit more, but this game isn't made for me. This game is made for a very specific audience, and I think it mostly hits. And at that price, if you're looking for something to teach young kids a little bit about D&D, a little bit about this hobby world of adventure board games and role-playing games, you know, I think this is a good. I think this is a good product. I think this is a pretty good introduction into this hobby. So, you know, it's not for gamers. It's for parents. It's for people wanting to teach gaming literacy and mechanisms to younger and to people who are very new to the hobby. So if you're looking for something like that, maybe Christmas coming up, I can see this game being pretty hot at Christmas. Give it a go and see how it turns out. So all right, guys, well, I hope you enjoyed that look at Dungeons and Dragons Adventure Begins, a cooperative board game. Take it easy, guys. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.